Okay, hi. So thank you for watching this video. Today I'm going to cover how to reduce behaviour problems in the classroom. So first you'll be thinking, who on earth is this girl in front of me and why on earth can I trust what she's saying? So my name is Woodland. I am a developmental psychologist, a complementary therapist and a wellness advocate. I run an independent mental health service up in Telford, Shropshire, and we support schools across the UK to reduce behaviour difficulties and to remove mental health as a barrier to learning and academic achievement. So this is what I do, and I'm jumping on, as well as the blogs, to give you a little bit of a deep dive, more information to really help you manage behaviour in your classroom. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is a behaviour problem. Now, everybody has a completely different idea on what is a problem behaviour, and I kind of sum it up as anything you don't want to happen. You know, this is your classroom. If you don't want kids to get up and get down and wander around, then that's a problem. If, however, you don't mind children wandering around stretching their legs because they're doing a 2-hour lesson and you don't want them to get cramp, as long as they don't disturb anybody else, that's fine. That's your decision. Now, because so many different classrooms and teachers have so many different variations on what is and what isn't a problem, children can get really confused. And even adults can get really confused. When you move from workplace to workplace, something you might have been able to do in one organisation, you're not allowed to do in another organisation. It takes you a while to realise that. So what we're going to go through today is really going to help you avoid the confusion when you're putting children in your classroom, when you're putting out there what you believe is the problem. We're going to take away all the confusion, and that's going to reduce a lot of the behaviours anyway, just because kids are clear on what they can and can't do. And then I'm going to show you 3 preventative strategies. There's 2 in the blog, there's an extra one on the video, and then 3 reactive strategies. And again, there's 2 on the blog and an extra one on the video. So the next step is you really have to plan. You really do. And obviously I've quoted Benjamin Franklin, who says, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. 100%. If you know that kids go nuts every morning for about 5 minutes, it drives you crackers, drives you absolutely bonkers, and yet every lesson you plan for a full hour's lesson. So then the last 10 minutes you're rushing, you're getting frustrated, you're already frustrated because they just won't sit down, won't shut up. You can see how that you're ignoring the truth of the world and you're ignoring what's really happening. So if you plan in 55 minutes worth of lesson, expecting the first 5 minutes to be a bit rubbish, then you're not going to get frustrated. So I'm not saying reduce what the workload is, I'm just saying how planning can make a big difference. So you need to sit down and work out, okay, so what normally happens in my class? Who disrupts? What do? Do they get up? Do they get down? Do they joke a lot? Do they refuse to do the work? What is it that's happening in your class that you believe is a behaviour problem? And then obviously you need to know who's doing it. Now, it's important that you understand how human behaviour works, especially in regards to rewards and punishments. And this is going to really help you out massively when you're supporting behavioural change inside your classroom. And last week's post, if you haven't seen it, and video was all on about why punishments don't work to change behaviour and what to do instead. So there is a link to that at the bottom of this post, and definitely, if you haven't read that one yet and haven't watched that video, that is really going to help and give you a clear idea on the punishments and consequences you can use to change the behaviours. Okay, so 100%, without doubt, the best thing you can do to stop children from disrupting the classroom is to prevent the opportunity for them to do so. If they don't have the opportunity to be disruptive, they won't be disruptive. A lot of the time children are disruptive because they're bored, because they don't understand what's going on. Again, they get bored. They may be gifted and finish their work, so again, they're bored. Usually when you're dealing with problem behaviours, it's because they don't understand or they're bored. So it really is that simple. They don't understand what's going on, so they switch off. and become bored, or they're just bored because they're not paying attention, or whatever reason. But usually boredom and communication are the main reasons why children are disruptive. Which is why education has to be fun. It has to be engaging, because if it's not fun and engaging, you're never going to break through that barrier. So next week's video and tips are all about how you can do some fun things to increase engagement, focus and concentration and memory. And all of those are linked to IQ. So watch out for next week's, and it's going to give you some really fun things you can do in like 5 minutes. So I really never ever want to add to your workload. It's all about making your life easier. Okay, so I'm going to go through 3 preventative strategies that are really going to help you. So number 1, absolutely give them something to do. Okay, if you've occupied them, they're not going to have the time to get bored. They're not going to have the time to joke and get distracted and stress you out and stress them out. So you can start by having something on your board at the beginning. You know, you must do this by such and such a time. And then obviously those who don't, here's the consequence. And again, flip back to previous posts when we're talking about how to make consequences effective. But that's it. And then obviously, importantly, when we come to the reactive, because obviously all of these interlink, you can't do one without the other, and this is where people tend to go wrong. They tend not to do both preventative and reactive strategies and not weave them in. So if they don't do it, the consequence is obviously the reactive strategy, and it has to be done straight away. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But just give them something to do. Give them anything to do. You could get them to do a quiz which rehashes what you did last time, so you can see how much they learned, how much they retained. You can get them to do something to find out how much they know about a subject if you're moving on to a new subject. You can just get them to do anything. Read a chapter, talk amongst themselves about something, you know, get them doing something straight away so that they know every time they come into your classroom, as soon as they step through that threshold, you're expecting them to work. Okay, so the next tip, so tip 2 is over-explain and over-prepare. 100%, there will always be that one child who just doesn't get it. And it's not always the same child. It could be completely different children depending on the subject. You know, sometimes children who have been, you know, a bit of a nightmare for a term, and you move on to a new subject, they just get it. It just clicks. Or you say that one thing and it clicks, and then they're never an issue, and it tends to be another child who just seems to fall behind. So you know this happens. So plan for it. While you're in your zone of genius and you're writing your lesson plans and you're immersed in that subject, just go above and beyond. So it used to drive me absolutely crackers, because I've worked with lots of children who have had dyslexia, and unfortunately a large majority of those children we've actually moved schools or taken out of schools and homeschooled to get them back up to a developmental appropriate level, and then maybe reintegrated them. And what used to drive me batty was the fact that all the teachers had to do was give tip sheet, literally a tip sheet. So, you know, this one young lad really struggled he had really slow working memory, really slow processing speed. That was his issue with his dyslexia. That's what was in his educational psychology report. You know, this is what he struggles with. And no matter how many times I'd been into the school, his parents had been into the school, or he'd asked, can I just have an A4 sheet of paper with all the new words, keywords, and a description on? So if I miss that bit, I'm not away with the fairies. You know, if you're talking about a new subject, for example, you're talking about, I don't know, the human brain, okay, and you're talking about the different brain regions and all the different bits that how they work, how they interlink, and you say, you know, the amygdala is responsible for emotion, and you say your frontal lobe is responsible for this, that and the other, and then you say, and now I want you to say where they are on a diagram, then he would have been sat there going, well, I just don't even understand what you just said. I'm still stuck at amygdala. I missed the rest of it. So then, you know, every week he was saying, you know, I missed this. And, you know, so the teacher would get frustrated. And I just said, well, if you're introducing a new concept, you're already doing the slides, you're already writing this information. Why don't you just prepare a tip sheet for him? And he can have that for his revision. So you know when he's revising from the truth and not a warped version he has, okay? So really, really just over prepare. And you know, what I've said on the blog post is to ask people who you know nothing about the subject. Do they understand what you're talking about when you explain it to them? Okay. Now this is slightly different depending on where you are in school. You know, if you are doing, you know, college and higher education, sometimes they'll look at you blankly because they've missed all the other year's worth. But if they kind of understand what you're talking about, and it's still going to be useful anyway, because they're going to say, hey, you know what, when you said about that subject, that little bit in there, I just lost you. If that's a new thing that you're introducing, which isn't based on anything else that your pupils will have done, then you know that you need to do a bit more explaining in there. So 100% over-explain, over-prepare, okay? And you'll see that a lot of that sort of disruption will disappear and you'll have more time. And if that one person still really struggles, you'll have the time to go and spend with them, because you won't keep getting interrupted over and over again. You know, you can just walk up to them and say, hey, here's the tip sheet, beginning of the class, you know, they know to come and get it off you. And you just say, if you're struggling, you know I'm going to come round and to double check that you understand everything. And this is a really good thing to do anyway, regardless of them not putting their hand up, is after you explain what everybody needs to do for that lesson, go and see that person and say, hey, do you understand what you need to do? Get them to tell you. And then you're going to know if they've got any gaps in their learning, gaps in their understanding. And it's a great opportunity for you to say, oh no, I didn't mean that. What I mean instead is, and then still say, do you now understand what you need to do? You need to make sure that when you walk away from that child, out of their own mouth has come exactly what you want to do, want them to do. Okay, so the third tip, so the sneaky one, is actually have your class rules front and centre, obvious for everyone. You can even go to the extremes of, and this is something I do with my parents when I'm doing parent interventions for children who are really, really struggling, is we get them to do house rules. But everybody in the house signs up to these rules. So every family member signs to say, yes, I agree with these rules. So you can take that and obviously get them to sign. When they're doing their new book at the beginning of the year, is you just get them to sign the charter, you know, your classroom charter. And on that, you have every kind of acceptable behaviour. And you have consequences for not doing that behaviour. And this is important. Rather than saying you will not get up off your chair, you say something like, we all sit nicely throughout the lesson. Okay, so you write on your rules what you expect them to do, not what you don't want them to do. Okay, there's a whole reason behind this, because of, you know, subconsciously seeing words and subliminal messaging, because it's on the board. So make sure your rules are front and centre that everyone can see, but it only says things that you want them to do and not things that you don't want them to do. And again, that links into one of the reactive messages, and we're actually going to talk about that one now. So the first reactive tip is be quick. I mean, like, quicker than the flash, okay? 100%. You have to be there straight away to deliver the consequence. Now, because you've got the rules on the board, this stops a lot of the toing and froing, huffing and puffing, inconsistency within the classroom. You literally say, you know, straight away, you know, they've thrown something. So-and-so, you have thrown something. You, at the beginning of the year, you signed up to. So you're reminding them, you said you'd do this. As a class, we decided the consequence was. So you signed up to this. As a class, we said that this is going to be the consequence. Therefore, they've got to go do it. You know, that's how simple it is. It takes it away from you. It means that you can be on the ball straight away, and it means that everybody's getting the same treatment, okay? So when kids get treated differently, it makes things a lot harder, whether they've got a mental ill health difficulty, whether they're gifted, whether there is no reason or no reason why you should ever accept inappropriate behaviour in your classroom, ever, regardless of mental ill health or regardless of who they are. You know, behaviour is a habit, and each habit can be worked. You can overcome them. Now, I'm not saying that some children who have mental ill health, such as, you know, ADHD, things like that, and autism, and even dyslexia to some point, you know, that they will be having difficulties, and it may make some things harder. But behaving in an appropriate way, if managed properly, they can do it. Okay? And that leads me on to the second point, which is about expectation. Okay, so if you expect something to happen, it'll happen. 100%. 100%. You won't believe how many times I have this argument with teachers and with parents. Just remove all expectations. Okay? So if you know a child has a mental health difficulty, ignore it. I don't mean ignore it by helping them, but I mean ignore it as a barrier to learning. Okay, that is the best tip I can give anyone who is working with children. If you have their mental health difficulty in your mind, so back to ADHD as an example, you may automatically think they can't sit still. So that means you let them get away with not sitting still because you think it's their issue, right? It's one of their difficulties. But you can train a child, you can support a child to have increased attention. It just takes them longer to get there. It takes them a bit more support to get there. But if you accept it, then they can never get better. And if you expect the day to be awful, it'll be awful. You will inadvertently behave in a way expecting that, and then it'll just kick off. So your subconscious is 100% in control of your body. It's not your conscious. So you have to pay attention to what you're really thinking. And there was a study quite a few years ago where this one psychologist told a teacher that the children with green eyes were more intelligent than the children with blue eyes in the classroom. It was that simple. They split the classroom down and said children with green eyes had higher IQ and were going to be more intelligent. So the teacher believed that she was treating all the children the same. However, she actually spent more time, gave more opportunities, and supported the children with green eyes more fully. Okay, so when they did a test at the end, the children with the green eyes had better improvement levels and were higher on the IQ scale. However, originally there was no difference between green and blue. You know, the percentages were roughly the same. But the children who had blue eyes, who were initially gifted, kind of slipped back because they were just ignored. So that teacher unintentionally changed those children's academic achievement level because she was told something. And this is why mental health labels, you know, if you get told that the child's a troubled child, you're going to assume they are. So you're preparing for it in the back of your mind, and anytime they do something, you're already going to be hyper-vigilant on what they're doing and probably missing what's going on in the rest of the classroom. So you may be overly punitive on that troubled child, that child that's going to cause trouble, and everybody else is getting away with it. So this kid's going to feel victimised, right? And then they're going to play up even more. Yeah, so this is all going on in your subconscious. I know you're not doing it on purpose. I just need you to be aware of it. Okay, so now the third reactive tip is if it is a child who is kicking off, okay, and I mean like throwing things around the room or that sort of malarkey, you need to take them out of the classroom. So you need to have a contingency plan in place, which obviously isn't on the ward, but you need to know that if things go south, you send them out of the classroom. Now, because to get to this point, ideally, they will already trust you a bit and they're more likely to go out. It's going to take a while. When you send them out and you've only just started making these changes, chances are they're still going to ignore you, and you may end up getting into a bit of a tussle. If you do, and I don't mean physical, I mean, you know, you're saying, get out of my classroom, blah, blah, blah. Try and keep a very, very calm voice. So deep breathe, calm yourself down, and just stand there and wait for them to do it. So being silent, asking somebody to do something and just waiting for them to do it, so you're expecting them to do it, is just far better than going, I've told you, move, 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 move. The more you talk, the more you're going to aggravate the situation. So you say it once and you just wait. So once they're outside, and this is why this is really important, so you get them outside, you obviously say to the rest of the class, you know, do this, carry on, whatever. You've already got something contingency in place. So again, this comes up back to your planning. You know, you have a random gap task. If at some point you need to escape the classroom to deal with somebody who's unruly, you've already got something for them to do, because you don't want to come back and everything else has gone crazy. You need to make sure that the kids have the best opportunity to learn, and you don't need a disruptive child to then disrupt everybody else's learning. So you sending that child out, then instructing the class on what it is they need to do, will give you the opportunity to calm down. It will give them the opportunity to calm down away from you as well. So often people go and speak to children too early. So send them out, deal with the rest of the class. And this shows them that actually the rest of the class is really important. What you did was inappropriate, and I'm going to deal with it. But I'm going to deal with these guys first, because these guys are also important. So then you go out of the class. And again, you know, it comes down to, you did this, this is your consequence, go and do it. So I know I said earlier you have to be super quick with the consequences, but getting them out of the class will count. And you want to give them the opportunity to calm down, okay? Very much like when you put young children on the naughty step, a lot of it is so that you can calm down and have a proper conversation with somebody, and gives the child the opportunity to learn how to calm down so they can, you know, regulate their emotions. So if it goes really bad, get them out of the class as quickly as you can. And then obviously you want them to come back into the class, because you want them to carry on learning. You don't want them to think that they can kick off and get away with not doing the work. But again, that comes back to the rewards and punishments. So make sure you read that blog post. Like I say, the link's underneath here anyway. So I have given you 6 tips. That's not 6, that's 8. 6 different tips on preventative and reactive strategies to manage behaviour in the classroom and eventually remove it. So it will reduce it, and eventually, if you just keep it up, you'll be able to remove it completely. If you're starting September, if you start as you mean to go on, you may not actually have any behaviour difficulties at all. So good luck with that. If you would like to learn how my organisation can support your school to overcome a lot more behavioural difficulties, or to adapt a lot of these strategies to work with children who are struggling with mental ill health, then please, please, please give us a call, or book yourself in to a time which suits you, and we will call you for a no obligation consultation conversation. So I look forward to hopefully working with you in the future, but have a lot of fun and get control of your classroom. Thank you for watching.